The Audio Train programme is supported by the following businesses. Tysers, a leading media insurance company. Garment Printing, supplier of printed clothing and branded merchandise. Prager Metis, international advisory and accounting firm. AV Resilience, a supplier of technical consultancy and broadcast equipment. Mint & Co, a dynamic legal and business affairs company. Audio Train is part of Audio UK, the trade association for professional audio production companies.
Hello, welcome to our Audio Train webinar about remote recording apps. There are several different systems out there, but which one is best for what you want to do? Well, tonight I'm joined by Iain Betson from AV Resilience. Iain is an experienced BBC engineer as well as a technical instructor, and he'll be giving his view of the pros and cons of the most popular remote recording apps. He's joined by super user Kate Taylor. Kate's an exec producer at Feast Collective, a network of freelance audio makers, and she herself has been making audio for over 15 years. She's produced award-winning programmes for the BBC and Audible, and is currently making lifestyle podcasts, The Modern House and The Great Indoors, as well as producing the ever-popular How to Own the Room with presenter Viv Grosskop. Kate will be giving her tips and hints about these apps from a user perspective. So as well as hearing from Iain and Kate, we're really keen to hear from you. So if you have any questions, please can you use the Q&A, and we'll be coming to them after Iain's presentation. So good evening, Iain. Tell us about what you do at AV Resilience.
Thank you, Caroline. Well, AV Resilience provides professional audio technical solutions to broadcasters and producers of audio content. And in essence, that is anything from building a studio to providing podcast equipment through to operational facilities to allow them to deliver their program. Principally, if you're producing an outside broadcast, when we can all do that when lockdown eases. And of course, training. That's one of the things I also do, teaching you how to use the equipment and the techniques behind it.
And presumably over the last 18 months, lots of experience with remote recording apps. So tell us, you carry on and tell us about all that.
Well, that's very true. I mean, 18 months ago, we probably would have hardly heard of these remote recording apps. They were probably just limited to Skype, really. And my experience from a technical point of view, when people asking me about them, was how good do they sound and how can I use them? Now, since then, we've seen that they're used as a matter of course in both TV and radio and audio content production to get remote guests and get their voice heard. The podcast sector has also been very instrumental in creating these apps. I'm going to look at four main ones in this webinar, two of which came from the broadcast sector pre-lockdown and two that have come subsequently in the last 12 months or so. My background in audio engineering as a BBC engineer for a number of years and running my company was really, and indeed I create a podcast for my business, but I come from a technical aspect on these applications. That's why I really wanted Kate as well as a sort of coal-faced front-end user of these in an editorial capacity to give her input to them. So, without further ado, let's get on and let's look at our battle of the recording apps and our main combatants. Cleanfeed and IpDTL, they were two of the apps that were early into this game. Probably about 3-4 years, I should imagine. IpDTL has been going. Certainly, that's the length of time I've been using it. And then the last two, number 3 and 4, Riverside and Zencaster, are really in the podcast sector. They've come along and allowing you to easily produce podcast material. But of course, they can be used in audio content creation for broadcast or other areas as well. Now, this is the battle of the recording apps, so I guess you'll want me to say who wins. and using an X Factor style pause. And the winner is, there is no winner. And I'm sorry, you haven't come here to think, well, is that all we've learned? And that's the end of the battle. Because quite honestly, because there's no winner, the one that best suits you is down to several applications, really. Firstly, the use you're going to put it to it, your budget, the operation, and what I mean behind that is the hardware and the software that it runs on, and indeed that your remote guests will use to access it, and what I term the ease of use. Basically, how techy is it? Can you jump straight in there without using the instruction manual, without going on the online manual, or do you have to sit down and sort of scratch your head and do a bit of trial and error to make sure you get the best out of it? One thing that I'm not really going to major on is the audio quality. Now, you might think, well, why not? That's a principal thing that we would be talking about. I've had a look behind the scenes of all of these applications, and basically they all use the same coding algorithm, technical term there, the same coding number crunching, so to speak, on all of them. And it's all what they class as CD quality, which it is. If you really want the numbers, they all use 48K sample rate at 16 bits. Some of them are adding a little bit more to that, but that's basically what they're using. And of course, we've heard all these applications over the last 18 months or so, whether it's been on TV or radio or podcasts. So we've got an idea now that the quality they can deliver. Even the less obvious, or the most obvious example that everybody, I have to say, probably gives it a bad press for audio quality, and that's the very application that you're watching on at the moment, Zoom. Could still be used. They've upped their game recently, but in Zoom's defence, it was a meeting and webinar platform. It was never designed to be an audio quality recording application that we're talking about right now. The quality you obtain, really, that's the first thing, is largely out of your hands for three major things. Firstly, the internet link you've got, and indeed that your guest will have, and the equipment they are using, equipment perhaps you're using, that you can add to that and increase and improve the quality of it. But the equipment, the unknown factor, what they've got, and of course where they are actually conducting their interview. You may recall I did a previous webinar on the equipment that you might use for Audio UK, probably about 2 years ago now. Time flies so, but that was on the sort of front end of it. Now, Kate, I'd like to bring you in here, and from a producer's point of view, what are the areas that you see that you can improve, that you can bring into sort of your control, that might be initially you might think, how can I control this guest and get the quality out of them?
Well, I think, I'm here and I'm on this call because I'm not particularly technical. And I think that while doing what you can to make sure that the tech is serving you as well as possible, there are also things that you can do to make sure that the guest is as well prepped as possible. And I think warning the guest and getting them to prepare as a little bit in advance is absolutely key. So I would usually send them an email. Very, very simple, not frightening them, not making them think they've got to do a lot of complicated stuff, but just outlining in bullet points. The best location they can choose is somewhere small, soft, and quiet for this recording. So that and I would normally say, if you've got curtains, you can close them. If you've got carpet on the floor, that's great. If you have to use a desk, put a towel across it or something like that. And I usually try and sort of make it feel a bit real by saying, if you're in a big open plan kitchen, that's not great. If you're in a small book-lined study or your kid's bedroom sitting on their bed, that's perfect. Outlining that they have to use Chrome, which is usually the case for all of these apps. I think you'll get onto that later, Iain. And stressing again and again and again that they have to wear headphones. It's absolutely key, and people are often quite surprised by this, but it really makes an enormous difference. The other thing that I would always do is try and talk them through how to make a backup recording on their phones, on their smartphones, and explain to them how to do that, and the fact that they need a bit of space on their phones to do that. And the reason for that is, as you'd alluded to earlier, Iain, you're at the mercy of the kit that they have, and they might have an ancient laptop with a terrible inbuilt mic. They might have something kind of wonderful and whizzy and brand new, and they might have their own recording setup. And frankly, increasingly, people do have good setups because of the circumstances we've been living through. But if they don't have a brilliant setup, and if they do have an ancient, terrible laptop mic, then almost certainly the best mic that they will have to hand is the mic in their smartphones. And so I send them a simple graphic saying, this is how you do this is how you record yourself on your voice memos, and then make sure that that is running as a backup alongside the app that I use. I also offer the opportunity of a line test in advance, just doing a little test. We used to do that a bit more in the early days. I think now people are a little bit more blasé, so we don't do it so much. But it can be a reassuring option to offer to a nervous guest. Having said all of that, I have had many instances, one with a quite prominent former White House official who, having had all of this information sent through, everything had gone through, talked to her people, and when we actually got on the call, I said, "Where are you?" And she said, "Oh, well, I'm where I do all my interviews, in my kitchen," which was then something that we just had to sort of deal with and take from there.
Thank you, Kate, very much. 2 points you said there, which I think are worth considering. Firstly, the headphones aspect and the echo cancellation. All of these applications, actually, they put it in writing. Zencaster do. They say that if you're going to use not going to use headphones, that the audio quality will suffer. But it's a reading between all the lines on these apps. They all say, please use headphones. Yes, software will cancel the echoes, but to do all that number crunching behind the scenes degrades the audio quality you're going to get. So for some simple solution of your guests wearing headphones, and I would suggest to use cabled headphones rather than Bluetooth buds, because there's a latency in there. But for simple application of headphones, you can help yourself no end and help the application. The other thing Kate mentioned is, of course, use your phone as a backup. Be aware, and I'll come on to this, of the platforms that some of the applications run on. Not all of them will run on smartphones and tablets at the moment. There are beta versions coming out, and of course, things will move on over time. But don't think that, I've just got a tablet, or my guest has got a tablet, they can do all of the link on that. A lot of these devices will only run on Chrome, and some of them will only run on PC. They won't run on Macs. So let's move on to the applications themselves. This is Cleanfeed. It was created really by two radio broadcast engineers primarily as an OB link to send quality audio between a remote site where they might be doing an outside broadcast back to the studio. But of course, you can also use it in a guest and interview situation. It's a very simple screen. If I just put it on the larger screen for you here, as you can see at the top, you've got my name there. This would be the host at the top, and then underneath you'll be adding your guests as you book them in. They have recently put an addition of headphones in, and I have to confess, because I've been a little bit of a skinflint on this. I do use Cleanfeed, but I use the free version. There's a little button up the top there that says Get Pro. When you get the Pro version and pay for it, you do get these extra headphones options. But I'm using the free version. I use it for my podcast creation, and I find Cleanfeed works very well for me. It's very simple. You can jump straight in and use it. They all work on the same basic premise of you are sending an email with a link to your guest, and they just click on it at the appropriate time. With Pro, you get some time to be able to schedule the links, and I think they're only available for a certain time, or the various other aspects to that. But so that's Cleanfeed for you, and you can see it's cleanfeed.net. If we move on now, this is IpDTL. It's rather a complicated front-end screen and is very audio-heavy. It was created by an ex-BBC studio manager and was really as a replacement, if some of you can, the memories go back that far, when we used to do fixed lines, or indeed a little bit later on ISDN links. It was a replacement to that, so we didn't actually have to rely on a specialist line or the guest having to go to even a local venue where the BBC or the broadcaster would have a fixed line and they could sit down and be interviewed. So IpDTL, DTL stands for down the line. IP, of course, is the internet. It was very audio heavy and offered and offers, I should say, a lot of facilities for stereo audio. You can have an onboard mixer, as you can see here. They've also, if you look at the bottom part of the screen, down here, they later on added pictures as well, because this is obviously getting to something as a given, really, now that the guests want images as well. IpDTL is IpDTL.com, and there's IpDTL2.com, and that site is mentions they have sort of fixed devices that will you don't even need to use a computer or a laptop to get on. They've got their own little devices running on Raspberry Pis, which literally just plug into the internet and do all of the link and everything for you. It's very useful if you've got regular guests, and you can use that rather than their own hardware. One thing about IpDTL that it's got going for it is it's not just internet link to internet link. You can connect to ISDN via it, and even to phones as well. You do have to do some certain setup for it, but you could use IpDTL, your internet link, to talk to somebody on their phone, or if they have an ISDN, and that's the only way they can talk to you, you could still dial an ISDN number on it. So it is it's quite flexible from that point of view. I do find it sometimes a little bit complicated to use, but that's maybe just me. You'll notice here you've got various settings. You can do left channel only, right channel only, stereo, mono, all those things. So it's not just a case of where Cleanfeed was, where you can jump straight in, center link, and it kind of works. IpDTL, you do need a little bit of setup with it. If we move on to the applications that really came off the back of podcast production, and to ease that. This is the kid in the moment, I think. If you're going on any social media, you'll see that they're advertising like crazy on Facebook ads and YouTube. This is Riverside.fm. When I first saw it, I thought it was actually a radio station, Riverside.fm, me coming from that kind of a radio background, and then I realised obviously they're just using the .fm as I guess Riverside.com have probably gone. Riverside FM is very much, when you look at it, a kind of virtual television or radio studio gallery. So if you imagine a radio studio where you have a control room, where you've got perhaps a studio manager, you've got a producer, other side of the glass you would have your host, and then you might have your remote guests. That's the roles that Riverside are kind of giving to people. They talk about when guests come in, they go into the green room and they can check their look in the mirror. They can see what they look like in the camera. There's 4 roles in Riverside. You can be a producer, you can be a host, obviously, you can be a guest, obviously, and you can be an audience member. This is where the podcast aspect of it comes in, that you can basically create a whole podcast with a host and multiple guests and a producer controlling them, and you can be an audience member listening in, and indeed sending questions in. And I think they're offering call-ins, what they call call-ins, where if you give your guests various permissions, or your audience various permissions, to actually ring in and put questions and be screened by the producer. So it is really all bells and whistles, and it runs very well. The video quality is very good, but I did find that, again, it's not something I could just jump straight in and use. I had to sit down and think about what this thing was actually doing. If we move on further in the alphabet, this is Zencaster. It's really a kind of halfway house between Cleanfeed and Riverside, really. Very clean screen, very simple, but Zencaster offers the same it's same functionality, slightly different parameters as Riverside in terms of you've got your host, you've got your guests, and you've got your producer roles. As you can see there, you've got me at the top. I could be a host, and if you're sending out your links to your guests, they all just appear down underneath my name, and therefore I can monitor them. I can see their audio coming in, and you can see their various camera pictures that they're producing as well. I mentioned that about the camera, Zencaster and Riverside, it's a standard IpDTL. They bolted the camera on later on. Cleanfeed is lacking in a camera. It's not something that bothers me as sort of an old school audio person when we used to get people on the phones or just indeed down the lines and it was just audio. And it doesn't really bother me personally as a host when I'm interviewing somebody. But I have had guests on my podcast go, "Where are the pictures?" And I say, "Well, this is audio only." And occasionally it's sort of it's the visual raised eyebrow. Oh, really? Cleanfeed are wise to this now, and they're saying that you can use Zoom integration. I've tried it; it's a little bit clunky, to be honest, and that's but by what they mean behind that is you're sending them both a Cleanfeed link and you're sending them a Zoom link, but you're only using the pictures off Zoom, but the audio off Cleanfeed. And I have to say the audio is better, as I alluded to earlier about Zoom audio. So the idea is that you're using the Zoom pictures, but the better quality of Cleanfeed. Okay, it's a way around it, but I did find it a little bit clunky. And the issues I could see were people know about Zoom, top of mind awareness now. They know what it is. They hear it every day from different places. They haven't really heard of Cleanfeed, and they go, "Well, I've got this Zoom link, so what's this other link do?" And I can see trying to educate your guests could be a bit of a battle. Kate, what are your feelings on audio only, which indeed Zencaster offers as a standard? So, you've got that option if you're just doing audio only, and Cleanfeed's audio only, or all the bells and whistles of Riverside, where you've got both pictures and sound.
Well, my experience bears out your suggestion, Iain, which is that people who I work with who have radio or broadcast backgrounds are very comfortable with Cleanfeed. They're not expecting to see pictures. They're very used to operating in an audio-only world. For other clients who aren't necessarily professional broadcasters, I agree with you. They expect to see pictures. And often I feel that pictures can be useful for them. It can help an inexperienced broadcaster to establish a rapport with their guest. It can provide talking points. It can give them cues of being able to see what facial expressions are doing, and so on and so forth. So I have tended not to steer people away from pictures if that's what they want, if they feel it would be useful for them. I generally don't record the visuals as well because I generally don't need them. But there are some instances. One of the shows I make, for example, she recorded herself throughout the interview, the visuals, and then cut them all together to make a little kind of clip thing to share on Instagram, on her social channels, and that was a very useful bit of promo. So for some people, the visuals are useful as well, but for most, I think it's just a nice to have.
The other issue, of course, is your internet line speed, both yours and your guests. You might think, well, why not? Let's just go for the whole sort of Easter egg. I've got the pictures. I'm going to discard those because I'm only interested in the audio, but that's what my guest wants. As I say, the Easter egg with the lovely wrapping, but all it is a chocolate bar inside, and we strip all that off just to get to their chocolate bar of our audio. That's all very well, but of course, you've got your internet speed to consider as well. And again, these apps are mindful of that, reading on their FAQs and their sort of pre-flight checks that some of them produce. They say, do be aware that your pictures will significantly add the load to to your internet line on both ends. And indeed, which I'll bring onto you onto this grid soon, Zencaster only allow 4 guests to be videoed at the same time. So these areas you've got to consider that it's all very well using these applications, but you might be limited in the guest numbers you can have, but also limited in the bandwidth that those applications offer to record your audio and record your video. As I said, looking at this grid in a little bit more detail, I created this, and it's by no means final and no means exhaustive, but it's just rating them really as to what the applications can do, how easy I found them to use, and I do class that as literally just jumping in and clicking around and seeing if it can work, rather than resorting to all the FAQs. The number of users, where it records, I'll come on to that in a minute, and the runs on and runs with, they're kind of related. And finally, we have to include the cost. As I said, Cleanfeed, audio only, Riverside, IpDTL, Zencaster are all offering that. But they all have limits on what they can do. As I mentioned, Zencaster, you said you're limited to 4 people being audio and video, although you can add, I've not got to the bottom of how many you can add. They always say you can add more people as audio only, so you can have those as just guests without vision. Ease of use, as I've already alluded to, Cleanfeed I found very, very easy, and Riverside and Zencaster, moderate to easy. IpDTL, I like it. I've used it on promotions for PR companies where I'm providing the technical facilities at events. The last one I did shows you pre-lockdown, and we got in just before lockdown, which was January just before lockdown in 2020. That was at a trade fair, and I was using IpDTL there for the simple reason that I knew I could link to radio stations that only had ISDN, or they didn't have the facilities to get the audio off a laptop to their broadcast desks. But I found it was, once I got the hang of it and set it up, it was okay. But if you want to jump straight in and use it, it could be a little bit complex. Users. Now, this is an important thing. It's Cleanfeed. They say 10 plus, and they say it's unlimited, but they do also say it's limited to your internet bandwidth. So if you're planning on stacking up panels of 30 people and using Cleanfeed to do it, you might be finding that you're getting the odd stuttering or slowing down somewhere in the chain. Riverside. I mentioned that you have these various roles. You can be a host and you can have 7 guests, and that's what you're limited to. But you can then throw other people in, such as your producer and your audience members on top of that. You're not limited. But the actual people who can contribute, as in who can speak and be videoed and recorded, and their audio comments recorded, is 1 host and 7 guests. IpDTL, there is a video going around on YouTube where they link to all different formats using what's called a Comrex if you work in the broadcast market, a normal telephone, a smartphone, ISDN, and indeed another IpDTL link. And they did that, 5 people, all these different formats, all quite perfectly well. I'm assuming you can get more than 5 numbers out of that, but again, you're internet dependent. And as I said earlier, you're limited on Zencaster to the 1+3 with video. Now, one area I wanted to come on to, which is which Kate alluded to earlier about back the material up on your smartphone, where these applications actually record. IpDTL originally started off as basically it was just a line, and you would have external equipment to record on. They have since added functionality where you can record locally. And indeed, Cleanfeed, depending on what you use, if you're going for the free version, you can do a separate recording of all your guests on one channel and you on the other as the host. Although if you go to the pro version, like Riverside and Zencaster, which you're paying for, you get local recordings, and you also get what they call a cloud recording. Right at the start of this webinar, I mentioned about the audio quality. The local recordings will be in the CD quality. And of course, they're not relying on the internet. It is purely an isolated recording. Effectively, you're just your guests' contributions or your guests' answers recorded in CD quality audio to their local machine, which could be a problem in itself. They also offer, in the case of Zencaster and Riverside, an MP3 cloud recording, they say, of lesser quality. In actual fact, I'd say if they're recording at 320 kilobits MP3, it is pretty much indistinguishable from FM broadcast audio, so you'll probably be okay there. But the problem you've got with your local recording, and this is going back to the things that are outside your control with your guests, is, of course, what condition is the laptop they're using? How much memory space has it got on it? It doesn't take long for your audio recording in this CD quality to use up a lot of memory space on their machine. So do bear that aspect in mind, that it's all very well saying, oh, I've got a local recording, only to find that when at the end of these interviews and they terminate the call, you end the meeting, the audio file is uploaded to the cloud and then downloaded to your machine, or you can click on the files and download them individually. It depends on the application, but of course, if that file has run out or that machine has run out of memory, that local recording, the file is either not all there, or even worse, the whole file is completely corrupted. Kate, if I could bring you in here, what are your thoughts on local and sort of cloud recording, i.e. having all of the audio brought in and recording it in one box, which is what I do with Cleanfeed. I tend to just use it as a link, or as you might do the local recording and bringing everybody's individual contributions in and mixing them subsequently.
Well, I really liked the idea of local recording. I was finding it tricky dealing with recording over the internet. Basically, we were doing a lot of recording with people who had unstable internet connections, or it was an international connection that was tricky, and it was definitely degrading the quality of the audio. So when I realised that it was possible to get local recordings, I jumped on that and thought that was fabulous. And largely, I think the experience of that has been very good, with the caveat, as I said earlier, that you are relying on the guest's microphone. So no matter how brilliant the technology is, you're still at the mercy of whatever they've got, which is inputting their voice into their machine for that local record. And for that reason, and also for the reason of space that you mentioned, I would always have your smartphone running as a backup sort of Simulrec tape sync recording. I have had, I think, one experience, only one, where the guest's laptop ran out of space, and he had been running his phone he'd been backing up, recording himself on his phone, so it was fine. And the good thing about Zencaster, which was what we were using for that one, is that it tells you that there's a problem, that the guest might not have enough space on their machine. So I was able to kind of put extra care into making sure that the phone was doing a good job backing him up.
Okay, that's a good point, as you say, that what Zencaster said, and how much material or how much memory space you need for your recording. They're actually very good, and I'm not just singling them out as for any particular reason, but I did find their FAQs were very, very useful. They're the only people that I could find had this sort of pre-flight check as to what you needed to do, mentioning about headphones, mentioning about the recording environment, and indeed mentioning that your guests must have enough capacity on their machine to record the material locally. We just go back to our slide here. We're moving on to the hardened software. As we've mentioned, they all pretty much like running on Chrome. As you can see, IpDTL, Zencaster, they have offered, they can offer some other applications. And notice, though, none of them are offering any iOS, none of them are offering any Safari. And the hardware they run on, yes, Cleanfeed says it runs on Android, but they specifically say it won't run on any iOS device like tablets and what have you. And although Zencaster is saying that they have got an iOS application in development, I believe, if I recall, Riverside have got you can join as a guest on an iPhone with an app. But they're all at the moment majoring on the really stick to the Chrome browser and run it on a laptop. That is what they are, or PC laptop. That is what they are recommending. The final thing I wanted to come on to is that, with the exception of Cleanfeed, which, as I said, offers you the free version with some limited functionality, if you want to get the best out of these, you've got to pay for them. IpDTL, I have to say, overall, are the most expensive at the moment, but please don't rule that out for that reason. They do offer, for instance, a day pass, which, although is not the cheapest thing in the world, it's what I used when I did my trade fair down the lines, and that's very simple. You can just get it for 24 hours, and you can use IpDTL functionality 100%, which is really good. So you're not even paying for a month, but after that you're into your monthly costs. Both Riverside and Zencaster, they're offering trials. They don't limit the functionality on either of them. If you go for the cheaper versions, they just give you longer recording times, either longer recording times in a whole session or how many minutes you can record in a month. Cleanfeed, it's a straight £25 a month for you to get their full functionality, whether that's stereo audio and separate recording tracks on local machines. So really, the choice is up to you. You pays your money, and you pays and you takes your choice. I'm not going to push anybody down one particular avenue of any particular application. And again, Kate, picking your brains here. What are your thoughts on being sort of, was a firm so agnostic, being really sort of a pan application, really? You mentioned you had a case that they use Zencaster, but are you using multiple numbers of these applications, depending on what the client's got, what the client you're working for, and what they're happy to use?
Yeah, I think it depends on I think your setup really depends on what suits what you need, because, as we've sort of alluded to, the app that you use is part of it, but there's also, are you going to send out USB mics to regular guests? Are your presenters capable of setting up a separate, say, a Zoom or a Tascam to record themselves independently? Does your budget stretch to X or Y? And so I think there are always specifics about your setup, which mean that one system might suit a particular client or a particular project better or worse than another one. For example, I'm finding that on Zencaster, the fact that you can have lots of people joining the call, even if they're not on the video, is quite useful for a lot of my clients who want to have, for example, they've got PRs or they've got assistants who want to be joining the call. So that's quite useful. I also, just in my experience, it's helpful to be able to kind of pivot between several of them. I tend to have a favorite that I'm using at any one time. And at the moment, I have been using Zencaster quite a lot, but I've been finding it a bit bumpy recently. Just doing things like I'm not being able to, it's being tricky for everybody to join the call. Everyone's clicking on the link, but it's not happening. Or it says the guest is in the green room, but they can't get out of the green room and into the recording. Or there might be some problem with actually being able to hear each other. And usually, the old trick of refreshing the browser, going out and coming again, creating and sending a new link has sorted these problems out. But for a brand new client, fiddling around, tinkering under the bonnet like that could be a bit of a turn off. So I have now just started using Riverside, which, as you say, Iain, everyone has been talking about recently, and that has been going very well. But I like to think that I know how to use Zencaster, and I've got that in my back pocket, and I can use Cleanfeed as well. If I need to, I can kind of skip back to Cleanfeed, which was one of the first ones that I used. Because when it comes down to it, there are often just gremlins that for some reason are not working and are not diagnosable remotely. And just being able to say, actually, guys, we're going to switch to a different application. Just hold fire for 2 minutes and I'll send you a new link. Even sometimes a Zoom link is a really useful trick to have in your back pocket, I think.
That's great advice. Others you may have heard and could consider, good old Zoom. As you said, we sort of used with Cleanfeed. Don't discount Zoom. It's something obviously that everybody knows, and top of mind awareness. If they're not in the broadcast or audio content creation field, they would have heard of Zoom. They are, and I'll show you a slide in a minute, are now offering what they call hi-fi audio, which is, I believe, stereo audio. I think they've come to be aware or been aware that people are using Zoom for things like virtual music concerts. And quite honestly, music down a Zoom audio is not the best in the world. So they're offering this hi-fi audio. Of course, that's all very well. Just be aware that and they admit themselves, it's an extra overhead on your internet link. StreamYard, you might have heard of. StreamYard is, on the surface, looks very Riverside. It looks very Zencaster. It's all sort of all bells and whistles, but it's aimed at podcasters who want to live stream to platforms, your YouTube, your Facebook, platforms. It doesn't appear to just be a one-to-one link that I want to get interview a guest and record that audio and use it later on. You are getting everybody together, getting your guests and streaming it through to one of the social media platforms. And of course, Skype. Don't discount it. We kind of it's raise our eyes sometimes, or it's a Skype call. Remember, Skype still offers telephone connectivity, so you can still use that to talk to people if you need to. If they really haven't got a decent Wi-Fi link or an internet link, you can get them on the phone. Just a quick check. This is where you can find the settings for your high fidelity music mode. It's on Zoom. It's under the audio and the advanced tab. Just put that on the screen there for you. You go to audio in the settings, go to advanced, and then you'll find this new high fidelity music mode and use stereo audio, and the little question marks do detail that you've got greater internet overheads when you use it. This is what StreamYard front end looks like. Again, pretty much all of these very clean apps nowadays. And said that's what you'll see when you go into StreamYard. And then finally, good old Skype. That's the one that we know and love and has been around for donkey's years. So I'd like to throw the floor open for Q&As if you have questions.
Thank you, Iain. I have got a whole load of questions here.
Oh, you have? Excellent.
Unsurprisingly, I guess, and all kind of a range of questions as well, which are really interesting. One of the things is about the grid that you showed, Iain. Are you able to share that with people that are viewing?
Yes, I'll make that available. I don't believe in having loads of text in PowerPoints, but the grid will be is probably got the most information. I do tell you it's not exhaustive. It's what I found, and really kind of my metrics of what I've gauged, ease of use and the costs. But yes, I'll make that available.
Great. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run through the questions. So please feel free to add more if you'd like to. There are a couple, Kate, actually, to start with you, if that's okay. Emily wants to hear where, Kate, you would suggest contributors position their smartphone for the backup.
Interesting question. There are different schools of thought on this. The only thing that I would definitely say is not too far away. Some people suggest that they hold it to their ears because we're all used to doing that, and you can kind of forget about it. And Iain, you might correct me on this, but I understand that the mic in the phone is kind of designed to work in that position, pick up your voice properly in that position. The problem with that is that some people find it intrusive if they've got notes and things. They don't want to be holding a phone as well. And also, if they've got earphones in, which they should do because they've been very firmly told by their producer that they must, then that can get in the way. In which case, what people often suggest is a pile of books on the desk, and then you place your phone on the books with a microphone that you were talking to pointing at at your face. The idea is to have it not much further than that, than a sort of hand-span away. I hope that helps, Emily.
Yes, I think that answers that one.
Annabelle, Caroline, I would add to that and I think that's all.
Don't tell me I've got it wrong now, Iain.
No, you haven't, Kate. You could do my job. Actually, the floor is yours. No, the thing to add to that. The microphones in smartphones are extremely forgiving. You can almost shout in them until they won't distort. You can also put them quite a way away from you and they will still pick up. The downside is the further away, they will pick up a lot of background noise. So I agree entirely about putting it on the book, putting it on a stack of books and just having it aimed at you. The other thing is make sure the thing's in flight mode. Because you don't want bings and bangs and calls coming in as it's recorded. Get onto your wanted recording anyway over your application. And the other thing is they have got enough memory in the phone. You can actually, some applications, and I have downloaded 5 or 6 of them, always the free ones, from the various stores and used. And some of them you can cut the audio bandwidth down on these, or only record in say mono, because I think some of the phones now will do stereo, but you can cut that down. So really you've got a longer recording time, because of course your phone memory might be full up with photographs and all the other kind of things, and the audio file you're recording onto it is still filling up the phone memory.
So another one here for Kate. Kate, which software do you use at the moment for your shows? You've talked a bit about you're using Riverside at the moment, but...
So is the question about which applications I'm actually using? They don't mean editing software, presumably.
Well, it's not totally clear, actually, whether it's software or whether it's the applications. Yeah, it's not totally clear.
If it's the applications that we're talking about, I did use Cleanfeed. The guest, who's a pro radio presenter, who I was mostly using it with because she doesn't mind not having pictures, we were having a lot of problems with audio quality. Just didn't sound that good, and I couldn't really work out why. So in the end, I've stopped using Cleanfeed. I now mostly use Zencaster, but then, as I said, I've had a few hiccups with that of late. So I'm now trying Riverside. And experience with that so far is that it's great. But I'm not particularly comfortable with all of this technology. I want there to be a simple, clean and easy answer that applies in every single situation. And as Iain has explained this evening, and as my experience bears out, that just isn't necessarily the case. So it's quite good to be able to pivot between the two of them, build between several of them.
Okay, moving on. Kevin would like to know, just out of curiosity, why Squadcast didn't make the list of applications. Iain?
Very good point. This isn't a sort of top 10 beauty contest. It really isn't. I had to draw the line somewhere. Yes, there are so many of those applications out there, and Squadcast is certainly something to consider. I did look at it. All I can say is that the audio quality is exactly the same in terms of the number crunching they use is exactly the same as so many of the other applications. If you want to use Squadcast, or you're wedded to it and you love the thing, that's fair enough. But perhaps have a look at the other applications, so you've got those other tools in your toolbox. And indeed, if you haven't heard of Squadcast, check it out and really use the same kind of grading I used on with the other applications. But no, there was nothing about. As I said, I've got no. I mentioned Skype. I mentioned Zoom. I've got no one particular application that I say I will always use, or one, don't touch that with a barge pole. I mean, as a good example, I know there's a major radio program that's produced where, yes, they have a lot of guests and they use Zoom to do the links, but they don't only use the audio that Zoom creates as a guide track. They actually are sending out MP3 recorders or WAV recorders, and these little units will do either nowadays, to stick those underneath the noses of the guests. They link up in Zoom in the normal way that we all know, but then they record the audio in quality on those recorders and then post them back. It might be a sort of as Americans might sort of say, sneaker net or post net, but it works for them, and they are guaranteed of quality audio. Obviously, the next question you might be saying is, what happens if it gets lost or damaged in the post? But really, that's outside the scope of this webinar.
Absolutely. I'm going to move swiftly on because we've got lots of questions here. Belinda has had terrible problems with echo on Cleanfeed and tried all the troubleshooting methods. She would appreciate any tips on how to resolve this. Iain.
Stop using Cleanfeed.
Well,
that's what I did. I mean, Iain might have more kind of expert advice, but I was finding the echo unmanageable. I again, they have a very useful thing where they go through all of the things that you need to do. They have very useful guidelines on their website, but it wasn't working, and that was one of the reasons why I stopped using it. Iain, sorry, I talked over you.
No, it's okay. Sometimes I check the blooming obvious. How loud and what headphones are they using? Are they open backed and picking up? Are they using headphones that are? I would not recommend for a minute using Bluetooth wireless type headphones because there's a latency involved. We've already got bad enough latency in some of these links anyway. So use a pair of cabled headphones. But of course, if you've got some of the little lightweight ones and people then turn the volume up, you could be getting some bleed through those headphones back into the mic. As I said earlier about the microphones on smartphones, the microphones on laptops as well are extremely forgiving and will pick everything up. All of the applications say if you can use headphones, do so. Don't use the echo cancellation. And sometimes, as Kate's already mentioned in the past, right, I'm just going to send you another link and use another application, or sometimes just turn it off on and off again. It's all I can really offer, unless if you really get hair pulling out moment, move away from using that particular application and try something else.
Deborah would like to know, what do you do with guests who've only got Mac computers?
Well, Zencaster links will work on Macs. I haven't had a problem with people not being able to make things work on Macs. Sometimes if people won't use a laptop, then that is a bit more tricky. But otherwise, unless you know differently, Iain, I think I'm using a Mac at the moment for this. I think a Mac shouldn't be a problem.
Maybe I jumped in feet first there, and obviously they all say use Chrome. I mean, a couple of the applications I think are mentioning Edge and a couple of others, but none of them mention Safari. So you might need to run it on Chrome, and as you say, using a MacBook. Again, apart from Riverside, I think, which, as I said, was offering audience participation via your smartphone, via an iPhone. None of them are mentioning you can use an iPad or an iPhone on our applications for 100% functionality. So yeah, you could use your MacBook, but you probably have to run it under Chrome.
Okay. Annabelle would like to know, would audio always be better quality than video, or doesn't it make any difference?
Are you saying just audio only or audio and video? If you're saying audio only, probably no. The number crunching they use is the same on the audio, whether it's audio only or the video. But of course, by adding the video into the mix, and again, Zencaster was promoting this quite heavily, that they can use HD audio and it's all wonderful, and this is a difference. I think they're actually almost going at the competition, saying this is the quality you'll get on Zoom, this is the quality you'll get with us. And you'll get HD video isn't that great, but of course you're pumping that lot of data down your internet line. You've got your internet overhead. I mean, as the example here, I'm talking to you from my business unit, which is in the middle of the fields in Derbyshire. You might think that's the worst internet going, but 6 months ago we had fibre to the actual socket on the wall installed, and it's a better internet out in the middle of the fields than it is when I go into Derby City, where I am my home internet. So a lot of it is your internet link. And if you're at all worried about what your guest has got, then I would just resort back down to the audio only. But the actual audio quality, once you strip the pictures away, is likely to be pretty much the same, whether it's audio only or audio and video.
Revenon wants to say thanks for delivering a great webinar, which is always nice to hear. But he also wants to know, have you used Audio Hijack to record a backup of both yourself, the host producer, and the guest? If so, would you recommend it?
I haven't used Audio Hijack, I must confess. I am aware of it, but I have never used it. So I'm not going to say anything further in case I really kind of put my foot in it. But thank you very much for that information. It's another one. Again, so many of these applications. Use Google and see what it's like. See if there's a free trial, or you can download an application and have a play around with it. But no, I have not used it myself. So sorry, I'm not the first port of call for that.
We've talked quite a bit about disk space, and somebody wants to know, how much disk space do you recommend a guest should have available if they're recording locally?
Well, off the top of my head, CD quality audio is a stereo audio is 11 meg a minute, so 11 meg a stereo a minute, so it's 5.5 meg on mono. That's full 16-bit full audio quality that as you would ever want. You're questioning me here now. There is a figure in Zencaster's pre-flight check that they mention as to how much space you should really have. But working on that sort of doing the sums of kind of 5 meg a stereo, 5 meg a mono minute, you can see that if you're doing an interview of any length of time, it doesn't take long to start filling your hard drive up. I mean, you know, when 430, 500 meg is quite normal on a recording file, on even the likes of Zoom, where it's compressed. When I've downloaded my webinars before and seen the kind of memory space they use up. So yeah, do your sums and work that out. But if you want, I'll dig that figure out for, or at least point you in the direction of Zencaster's very handy pre-flight check where they mention that figure.
And connected to this is a question about, do they all offer good support lines and advice if you have concerns? Annabelle is saying Cleanfeed has got a great support line.
Yes, my experience, they have got great support. They've all got good support, and I'm sure they'll all endeavour to offer the best. And I always say this to anybody in any software application that they might be using: look at what you're not getting. And one of the things you don't usually get in some applications is support. Whether you'll get that support at the click of your fingers by email return on, say, 7 o'clock on Christmas Eve is a different matter. You might have to wait, but I've certainly found that when I have sent questions into the likes of Zencaster, IpDTL, I can't comment about Cleanfeed because I've never done so, but that's great to hear that they have got good support and there's a good experience of that. But when I've questioned those two applications, I have got a good email reply. I mean, I know there's a human on the end of it, and they're willing to help.
Oh, that's good to know. Good to know. Have you tried high fidelity on Zoom for recording speech audio, and is it good? From Emily.
I have tried it, and I must confess I haven't. I did a webinar using Zoom at the weekend, and I recorded it in a high fidelity audio just to see. But I must confess I haven't had enough time, because I've been getting ready for this webinar, to actually analyse the results. So Zoom are saying, and they're pushing this, that it is for musicians and sort of creative gatherings, rather than just a webinar presentation like this, or a meeting, a business meeting. They're pushing these sort of creative gatherings, and hence why they've introduced stereo high quality audio. But yeah, I've got to find out what it's like. It's got to be better than existing Zoom audio. It must be. They wouldn't be putting the effort in otherwise.
Okay, you might really just have covered this next one. Please, can you remind us what the benefit of selecting high fidelity music mode in Zoom is for audio recordings?
As I said, it's probably if you are planning on putting anything other than speech down it, because a lot of these algorithms, technical term now, but that's what they're called, a lot of the algorithms are designed for speech. If you've ever been on hold with your phone and they're playing kind of green sleeves down the phone as on hold music, you'll hear that kind of shushing in the background. But the whole point there is all the number crunching in the background that's going on. For you to hear that on your phone is not designed for music, it's designed for speech. And therefore they have to put what's called another algorithm in to deal with music, to increase the bandwidth, to be stereo, just to produce the fidelity that music or higher quality audio demands. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why the Zoom audio it sounds less than it is, because it is designed purely as speech on a meeting platform, and that's what it was originally designed for.
Sure. We're going to keep going just for another couple of minutes, if that's all right, because I'm quite keen to get just through some more of your questions before we have to leave. But Deborah wants to know, are you using phone as a main mic or simply as a backup? That might be one for you, Kate.
It depends. I think of it as the backup. Perhaps because we're using the application to actually enable the guest and the host to speak to each other. So I think of it as a backup, but I would say more often than not, it can be better quality audio in the end.
Blanche would like to know whether either of you or both of you are using paid versions of all the applications.
Me, well, when I did all the research into this, obviously I wanted to do it as cheaply as possible. I use Cleanfeed in the free version, and I only use it as a very basic setup. I don't use any of the recording applications of it. I purely use it as a link, and I use it because it just works for me. Of the other options, both Riverside and Zen do offer you free trials. I think one of them, if I recall now, Riverside, it limits your time, and Zencaster, it limits the time you can create an interview for. I think it's something like 60 minutes or limited per month. And Zencaster, it's a 14-day trial, and after that you've got to pay. So you can get your full functionality on either of those. And as I said, IpDTL you do have to pay for off the bat, and I have used the professional version of that, albeit on a day pass. Kate, what's your feelings on those?
Well, I paid for them because the volume of time and recording that I needed to use them for meant that the free trials ran out. And also for Cleanfeed, as you said, you get limited functionality on the free version, and it's very useful. One of the things that it offers with the pro version is that it offers separate tracks recording, and it's very useful to have your guest and your host on separate tracks so that you are in control of when they talk over each other, and that's a real help for editing. So yes, I've paid for all of them.
Last couple of questions then. Sorry.
I was just about to say, sorry, Caroline, I was just about to say IpDTL, the free version, do offer the ability that your host is you on one track and all your guests on another track. But as Kate points out, having these separate tracks is far better.
Okay, Rob is saying that he's had Zencaster drop out a bit lately. Frustrating because we thought they were golden. So we tried Riverside, which is good. But does anyone find that there's a little delay?
I haven't had that problem yet, but I haven't used it that much yet. It's really interesting that you've had that problem, Rob, with Zencaster. I've definitely experienced that, of kind of mini dropouts for no very clear reason. And again, I think it just points to the fact that thus far, no one is golden. Maybe Riverside will be the one, but it seems like you're getting a small delay. So, maybe they'll sort that out, and maybe they won't, and there'll be someone else along who'll be the golden child next time around.
Final question. Annabelle was wanting to know, on the checklist for guests, should we talk about internal mic settings on their laptops?
Kate, did you want to, as you say, final question, wrap this up about the human factor? I'll just move on the slide here and answer that with the, you could do all of these things. And I'll just go on the technical side before we jump in there. We've got all of these things about delay and I had a great experience with Zencaster and now it's dropping out. A lot of these things, of course, we must realise are out of the scope of the developer. It's all down to that big cloud. It's all down to that internet links and our ADSL links that we brought into our homes and into our workplaces, and then all the data traffic at different times of the day. So certain parts of that on a technical level are completely out the application's hands, and sometimes you're just caught in the crossfire that you have a bad experience. But to wind up, Kate, if you could throw that human factor in, which I thought was very, very good.
On the question of internal mic settings, if they have if they have a plug-in mic, like a USB mic that's being plugged into their laptop, it is worth checking. Yes, going to their mic settings and checking that is the one which is selected rather than the internal mic. So in that instance, yes. Otherwise. Otherwise, probably not. So I would use it as a troubleshooting thing. If, for example, they can't hear you, you need to make sure that you go into their settings and that they can make sure that their headphones are selected properly. And if they've got an external mic, then make sure that is selected. But otherwise, you don't have an enormous amount of control over what their mic is doing. And as Iain says, you just. There is always this human factor, so that you don't always have as much control as you would if you were there and recording on location. And I think it's worth thinking a little bit as well about how you mitigate that human factor. Lots of you will have your own techniques and your own things that you do, but some of the things that I do include building in 10 minutes at the top of the interview just to sort out the tech, and communicating that to your guest so that they know that this is all built in, that there is time to do this back and forth. And so they aren't getting stressed and tense about, well, it's not working, and we need to get on with this. I think that really helps. Don't be sheepish or apologetic about checking the setup. So checking the mic settings if you need to, checking the location that they're in, trying to get them to move out of their big open plan kitchen if you at all can, making sure that they're wearing headphones, explaining to them how important that is, helping them sort out their phone backup, checking their mic position if they do have an external plug-in mic. Again, these are sort of basic things, but reminding them, I generally say, find a comfortable position and then stay still and stay in that position. Or if you need to move, then move and then speak. Reminded them not to bump the mic. I was just earlier talking with my laptop on my lap, and people don't necessarily realise how it means that your legs are kind of brushing against the mic. So I've now just got a chair in front of me with my laptop balanced on the chair. Making sure that people do basic things like that can really help the quality of your audio. Reminding them about putting any clicky pens or pieces of paper that they don't need out of their reach, reminding them to take off any jangly jewellery, reminding them not to sit on a creaky chair, things like that. But also explaining that if there is an interruption, then own it. There is a great joy in the unexpected interruption, the dog that comes into the room, the child that comes into the room, or as happened to me the other day, a guest got a call on his phone, which he had not put into flight mode, Iain. But it was a call from his upholsterer, and he was talking to us about restoring antique furniture. And then he got a call from his upholsterer halfway through, and had a little chat with him and said, "Oh, I've got to go. I'm doing an interview." And it was actually a really nice, little, lovely moment. So you don't always have to pretend that real life doesn't exist. And I also always explain to people that it will be edited. So you will sometimes have interviews where people are talking like this all the way through, and you think, what is going on? And then you realise that they're trying not to cough. And it can be useful to explain to somebody that if you need to cough, it's fine, cough, we'll cut the cough out. And that's better than you trying not to cough for a 20-minute interview. So, you can cough, you can retake, and if you desperately need to go to the loo, you can go to the loo. We will cut those bits out. So, it's all easy. So I think that those things and making your guest feel more comfortable will help mitigate the human factor.
Kate, that's really helpful. Thank you. We are running over on time, so I think I'll draw it to a close. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you so much to Kate Taylor and Iain Betson. and they're both very happy for you to contact them afterwards, so I will be sending out the details. On the 10th of June, we've another Audio Train technical and creative session when we're going to hear from the award-winning sound designer Eloise Whitmore from Naked Productions, so please do sign up for that. And don't forget you can see many of the sessions which have been recorded, and they're on our website at audiotrain.co.uk. So until the next time, goodbye.